Hey everyone, I'm Case Aiken, and I'm back talking about the player-facing options in Forgotten Realms Heroes of Faerûn. So today we are going to continue our series discussing the feat in this game. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Epic Boons. I've already done a video on subclasses from this book, I've done a video on the origin feat in this book, and I've done a video on the general feat in this book. And overall, I think that the subclasses are generally exciting, although there are a few ones that I have quibbles with. The origin feat are okay. There's some good ones, but are otherwise underwhelming. And the general feat have been were pretty good. I was fairly happy with a lot of them. There are a bunch that were duds. But now let's look at the Epic Boons. Now, Epic Boons are a different kind of feat. You can only take them at level 19 or 20. Now, in the player's handbook, all the classes say Epic Boons at level 19. That is not the prerequisite for taking it. It's not a class feature. It's just you have hit character level 19 and you get an ability score increase at that level. So if you were to multi-class in such a way that you still ended up with an ability score increase at 19 or 20, you could still end up with an Epic Boon. And that's good because the Epic Boon feat are really strong. At least the ones in the player's handbook are. They are character defining at these really high levels, and in many cases are always on abilities that are doing lots of big stuff that dramatically change the way that your character functions. But that said, I don't really care that much about Epic Feat. I think that the Epic Boons come online so late in your character progression that while they can be huge character redefining things, they typically are making you just really good at things that by level 20 you're really good at anyway. So I think they're fine, but it takes so long to get there, it's hard to see them in play. And maybe this is a little bit of sour grapes considering that I am currently in a 2014 5e game that has gone from level 1 to level 20, and we did not get those Epic Boons. But that is neither here nor there. Instead, we're going to just talk about these ones here in this book. And we open with Boon of Bloodshed. So again, all of these require you to be level 19, and that's just going to be the state for all of these. I don't think there are any prerequisites besides that for any of the feat in this book. I'll let you know if we come across one. So you get an ability score increase. All Epic Boons give you an ability score increase of some kind. Many of them give you any score, such as with this one, where increase one ability score of your choice by 1 to a maximum of 30. So that's changing from up until this level, the maximum was 20. So now you can theoretically go up higher. The downside is that you are likely sitting at a 20 for your key stat, and so this is putting you at 21. That doesn't actually affect your modifier. But that is just part of the game. Killer's Fortune. When an enemy you can see is reduced to 0 hit points, you gain advantage on the next attack roll you make before the end of your next turn. Okay, that's nice. I think that's a pretty nice thing. That's going to be on fairly frequently, although obviously you're not just going to be mowing down characters aside from like minions at high levels. You'll probably be facing a few big bad evil guys that are not just going to go down easy. But again, minions, summons, those kind of things are going to be useful for keeping this advantage up. Power from Pain. Once per turn, when you make an attack roll while bloodied, you can deal extra damage to the target equal to your proficiency bonus. The extra damage type is the same as the attack type. Okay, so bloodied, every time you're below 50%, you're gaining proficiency bonus damage with an attack roll, and that is it's not on your turn, it's once per turn, so attacks of opportunity also gain this benefit. I don't mind that. It is not better than Great Weapon Master, for example, although this applies for any kind of attack roll, not just weapon attack rolls. So potentially some strong synergy there with some other classes that do attacks, like, say, Warlocks with their Eldritch Blast. Or just spellcasters in general making attack rolls. I think sorcerers with the chromatic orb builds that have become really popular might be interested in something like this. But this is only once per turn. It is, however, once per turn, and that is nice. And the advantage is also nice. So I would say that this is a pretty okay Epic Boon feat. It's like comparing it to the ones in the player's handbook. Like there's the one that once per turn you just don't miss, and that's going to be way more impactful than this on your character. But this isn't bad. I could see taking it if you're really trying to be a character who's just spiking damage, especially if you're doing like one big hit per turn as opposed to multiple hits. That I could see this being really nice just for the extra damage. So like rogues would really like this when they're bloodied. Boon of Bountiful Health. You gain the following abilities. Ability score increase. Increase one ability score by 1 to a maximum of 30. Augmented health. When you gain temporary hit points, increase the number of temporary hit points you gain by 5. At 20th level or 19th level, this is not going to make a big deal. The thing where this is helpful is where you're getting lots of small temporary hit points. So class features that are active for constantly refreshing ones, or like heroism, for example. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a big feature for you, but it is always active and gives you just a little buff to your temporary hit points. So if you're building around getting temporary hit points frequently, this is going to increase that. But I don't think this is a huge feature. And then they get superior recuperation. When you spend 1 or more hit dice to regain hit points, you can instead use the highest number possible for each die. I don't think this is an epic boon. I think that this feat in general should be just a general feat. Like, neither of these features are big enough to really justify being an epic boon. I could see this as a perfectly fine general feat. But even then, it would be not the feat I would take first. So I think this is a weaker one. I would probably pass on this one if you're actually getting to level 19 or 20. But it's, yeah, I just don't see that one being one I would take over some of the other ones, including some of the other ones in this book. So we move on to Boon of Communication. Ability score, this time it's only Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, so this is going to be more of a caster-focused one. Cunning Speaker. You don't have disadvantage on ability checks to influence hostile creatures. Okay, that's worthwhile. That it always on lack of disadvantage against hostile creatures is pretty good. I know that I said last time that the intimidation, I don't think that many DMs really care about, but there are plenty of other ways you're going to try to influence a player or a character that the DM is going to inflict disadvantage on you for, and so this is nice. It's not Epic Boon nice, but by itself it's nice. Moving on, Gifted Interpreter. You understand the literal meaning of any language you hear or see signed, and you can understand the literal meaning of any written language you see. Okay, so you can communicate with any language perfectly. The literal meaning is kind of funny. It makes me think of the Darmok episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where the language was so riddled with idioms that even though the translators worked, no one could understand what people were saying. And so that's kind of funny. I think that could come up with if a character were to take this. And you also gain telepathy within a range of 120 feet. And that's pretty good. I think that this is okay. This is, I mean, it's better than telepathic, which I think is a fairly underwhelming feat in the 2024 rule set. But I don't know who's going to take this who hasn't already figured out their communication stuff. I think telepathy with a range of 120 feet is nice, but frankly, the message cantrip does a lot of the effects that you need that you would need telepathy for. And I think that, yeah, this is overvaluing the amount of communication, but it's not completely without value. This is better than the Boon of Bountiful Health, for example. So I would put I would put this as like a C- epic boon. Moving on to Boon of Desperate Resilience. Increase your strength or constitution score by 1. And when you are bloodied, you have resistance to every damage type except force. Okay, that is really interesting. I could see this being taken by quite a few people who are getting their butts kicked frequently. That is this is more of the type of epic boon I'm thinking. I would almost say they should just have resistance always. The bloody condition is sort of whatever. or have resistance to everything, including force, because, man, force is going to be really common at 19th and 20th level, especially with your big bads. But on the other hand, like if you're fighting like a Tarask, this is still going to be plenty helpful. So, yeah, I could see this being really desired by someone who knows that they are going to be a bit of a pincushion in the game. So this, I think, is a better Epic Boon feat. This, I'd give this in the B plus kind of category. Moving on to Boon of Exquisite Radiance. Increase one ability score of your choice by 1. Eternal Rest. Creatures you reduce to 0 hit points can't become undead. Okay, that is a nice feature in an undead-heavy campaign. I could see that being something that a paladin or cleric would want to grab. Powerful Radiance. When you make a damage roll that deals radiant damage, you can instead use the highest number possible for each damage die. Once you use this benefit, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. What? A long rest for that? I mean, sure, there's some big spells that you could be throwing out that deal radiant damage, but once per long rest, like this is an epic boon. This should be frankly once per turn, or if failing that, at least proficiency times per day. I am flabbergasted that this is once per long rest. This is a fine feature, but a terrible execution of it. I don't know who would take this feat with this restriction. Only once per long rest is so debilitating on a feat like this. Now, I mean, you could stack this with the Spellfire feats from the Origin and General feats to really buff up your radiant damage. But I am not sure off the top of my head like what spell is worth doing a whole feat just to do maximum damage on the dice roll. This is a wasted epic boon. Just because of that once per long rest. I mean, even if it was once per short rest, that would be at least something you could more reliably count on, and would be more worth an epic boon. But being once per long rest for an ability that is just a maximized spell. This is old school meta magic, and it's just not very exciting. So I think that's a dud. Moving on, Boon of Fluid Forms. Increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1. Shape Changer. You can take a magic action to shapeshift into a beast, humanoid, or monstrosity with a challenge rating no higher than 10. When you shapeshift, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to the hit points of the form. The shapeshifting effect lasts for 1 hour and ends early if you have no more temporary hit points, or if you take a magic action to return to your true form. Your game statistics are replaced by the stat block of the chosen form, but you retain your creature type, alignment, personality, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma score, hit points, hit point dice, proficiencies, and ability to communicate. If you have the spellcasting or pact magic features, you retain it too. Upon shapeshifting, you determine whether your equipment drops to the ground or changes in size and shape to fit the new form while you're in it. Once you use this benefit, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Now, that's worth a long rest. I think that this one, I mean, this is like a super version of Wild Shape. You get full spellcasting. I could really see this being a thing that players are going to want to do before a big fight, and especially spellcasters, to turn into something that's really big and tanky, and so that they can take a bunch of hits before they start dealing with their spellcaster squishiness. So I could see that being really appealing. I could see combat forms really liking this. So there's certainly a lot of potential with this one, and I think it justifies being once per long rest because it lasts for an hour. So, sure, would I rather have more uses of this? Yes, but I think lasting for an hour, that's pretty good. And then Hardy Transformation. When you gain temporary hit points when you shapeshift, increase the number of temporary hit points by 20. Okay, so for one thing, this isn't shapeshifting just from this class feature. So for one thing, this is giving you 20 temporary hit points on top of the shape changer feature that you're getting at the first part, which makes this even more justified in being a once per long rest. But also, if you shape change for any other way, you get 20 more temporary hit points. So if you polymorph, if you wild shape, these are huge. So I could definitely see a druid loving this feat, having a supercharged thing to transform into is definitely going to be appealing to them. And in addition, having this bonus to all of their other shapeshifting is going to be really nice. Moon Druids are going to really like this, is I guess what I'm getting at here. So this is a really good one. I think that this, once per long rest is not great, but it is an hour, and that part is fantastic, and the actual feature is fantastic. I would put this as like an A- on my arbitrary scaling that I'm doing right now. So yeah, I think this is a pretty good feat. Moving on to Boon of Fortune's Favor. Increase one ability score of your choice by 1, and saving throw reroll. When you fail a saving throw, you can reroll it and must use the new roll. Once you use this benefit, you can't do so until the start of your next turn. I think that this is the classic style of Epic Boon. A once per turn benefit that is really good. Now, it isn't a guaranteed success, but it is only going when you fail. So that's nice, and it is inexhaustible. It happens every single turn for you if you are constantly making saving throws. So I think that this is a really nice benefit here. It would probably be a little bit nicer if they gave you a small incentive more to succeed, like if you got some benefit to the second roll, a la Indomitable for a fighter. But just having always on rerolls for saving throws that you fail is really good. And if you are failing because the dice failed you, this is going to make a big difference for you. Now, there's going to be saving throws that you just can't make. Like at high levels, if they are targeting the wrong stat for you, you might not be able to make it at all, and this is not going to do anything to help you. But it's also one that you can choose. So if you know for a fact it's not going to help you, you don't have to waste your feature for that turn. And then save it for another saving throw that you would make between now and the next turn, or the start of your next turn. Either way, I think that this is a pretty classic style of Epic Boon, and I think that this is pretty good. I would give this an A. Boon of Poison Mastery. Ability score increase, any of them by 1. Immunity to poison damage and the poison condition. All right, this is the kind of thing we're looking for an Epic Boon. Poison is nice to have immunity to. Immunity is rare for players, so that is going to be really good in that regard. There's plenty of more powerful NPCs that have poison effects, and so that's going to be nice to have. And you can deal with poison without having to risk accidentally poisoning yourself, so that's always good. I could see that being pretty nice. And then Perfect Poisoner. Once per turn, when you roll dice to determine poison damage a creature takes from your attack, spell, or feature, you can instead use the highest number possible for each dice, so maxing out your poison damage. Now, this does nothing to get around poison immunity or poison resistance. Poison immunity is the bigger thing. While it's infrequent for players, it's very common for higher level monsters. So this is not going to do anything to get around that issue, but it's making it way more reliable and making the damage a much bigger spike. Assassins are really going to love this, and anyone who takes the Poisoner feat is going to really like this. So I think that this is a pretty good Epic Boon. That immunity to poison and the poison condition is doing a lot here, but that always on boost to your damage is going to be considerable for the fights where it matters. It won't do anything on the fights where it doesn't matter, where they're poison immune. But I think this is a generally fine Epic Boon feat. I would put this as like an A-. Boon of Revelry. This is another caster focus feat, so it's intelligence, wisdom, or charisma that you are advancing your ability score by. Inspire Dance. You always have Otto's Irresistible Dance spell prepared, which is a 6th level spell. You can cast it once without a spell slot, and you gain the ability to cast it this way when you finish a long rest. You can also cast the spell using any spell slots you have of the appropriate level. When you cast the spell, it requires no spell components, and taking damage doesn't break concentration on it. So this means that always, it's not just when you cast it this way, it's when you cast the spell. So this is a feat that is really beneficial to a caster, because you want to have a 6th level spell slot so you can cast the spell further. Because Sing Out. While a creature that failed its saving throw against your Otto's Irresistible Dance has the charm condition from the spell, it can't cast spells with verbal components, and it sings delightful nonsense if it can sing. So this is shutting down casters if you are using it appropriately, and that makes this a way better spell. And considering it's a 6th level spell, that is a pretty worthwhile level of magic to be gaining access to as a part of an Epic Boon. So I think that this is pretty good. I wouldn't have minded if it gave you a few more uses of the Irresistible Dance spell without a spell slot. Just because if you want to take this and you're not a full caster, then you're only getting that one use. But I think that this is still pretty good. I could definitely see, I mean, bards are going to love this. Sorcerers are going to love this. It's just really, really nice effects there. So yeah, I mean, any full caster is going to love this, frankly. So especially because you can't lose concentration from damage. That's really nice feature there. So you can really maintain a lot of charmed creatures with this ability, and I think that that's worth an epic boon. I don't know. I feel like A- is the right territory for this. It's not always on, but it is a nice big boost to your character. Boon of Terror. All right, so increase your charisma score by 1. That's interesting. Most of these ability score increases from epic boons are either all your ability scores or at least a couple. This is just charisma, which is interesting. And this is a fear-based feat, which, going back to the Dragon Initiate from the Origin feat, it's so weird that that's keyed off your wisdom modifier and not off your charisma modifier or just your choice. Sorry, mini rant right there. You have immunity to the frightened condition. That's really nice. Paladins get that at high levels, so this isn't going to be something that you take as a paladin, or at least not for this feature. But it is a nice thing to have, especially if you're fighting dragons. That's a really useful ability. Flee Fools. When a creature with the frightened condition starts its turn within 60 feet of you, you can take a reaction to stoke its terror, provided you can see the creature and it isn't behind total cover. If you do so, the creature must succeed on a wisdom saving throw, DC 8 plus your charisma modifier and your proficiency bonus, or spend its turn moving away from you by the fastest available means. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Okay, so this is inducing the thing that is in the fear spell and not the frightened condition, which is the actually making you run away part of that. Once per short or long rest, this by itself is not huge, but with the immunity to frighten, that's nice. And then you get intimidating. You gain proficiency in intimidation skill as well as expertise. So this is better than skill expert just by virtue of that. So this is a big feat in terms of just all the pieces. I think it adds up to a good feat, but the individual features are not huge. I give this a B. I could see taking it. It's unfortunate that the frightened condition part is already baked into the paladin class, because the Oath of Conquest paladin would rather like this. Because they're very based around doing fear effects. But it's still plenty of ways to make use of this. I don't like that Flee Fools is only once per short rest. But short rest is better than long rest. I will say that. So yeah, a B. Anyway, moving on. Boon of the Bright Sun. Ability score increase to Constitution, Wisdom, or Charisma. That's a weird spread there, but we'll take a look at what the actual features are. As a bonus action, you radiate a 30-foot emanation of bright light that is sunlight. If any of the emanation's area overlaps with an area of darkness created by a spell, that spell is dissipated. The emanation lasts until you dismiss it, no action required, die, or have the incapacitated condition. So this is an always-on sunlight effect, and that dissipates the darkness spell. Okay, that has some potential use. Obviously, if your party is built around like shadow monks, this is not going to be a thing you really like, but it is potentially quite effective at keeping your characters in the light. And it is explicitly sunlight, so that might have some impact on certain characters if you are fighting undead, like vampires. And then Fortifying Light. When your daylight presence is active, at the start of each of your turns, you and your allies you can see in your daylight presence gain 10 temporary hit points. Okay. Now this is interesting because this one, this one would stack with the boon of Bountiful Health that gives you that 5 bonus temporary hit points each time you get temporary hit points. So if an ally is taking this, all of a sudden that becomes slightly better. Although I think that this is still this is a way better feature. This is basically always on, just damage reduction of 10 to your party. So That's pretty nice. This is a really good one. Every turn, 10 temporary hit points to you and your allies. That is a lot of reduction in harm. It's not going to, like, 10 temporary hit points at 19th level or 20th level aren't going to last your turn, but it is taking off damage consistently and for your whole party. So I think that this is a really good feat. I would give this an A. This is very solid for survivability purposes, and the fact that it's just it's just an always on buff to you and your allies is really good. So I would give this an A. Moving on to Boon of the Furious Storm. Ability increase, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, so a caster one. You have resistance to lightning and thunder damage. While you are bloodied, you have immunity to lightning and thunder damage. Okay, that's really cool. The resistance is very nice, but then the bloodied giving you immunity is amazing. Tempest clerics are going to love this. The fact that they didn't get resistance in 2014 at least to lightning and thunder is ridiculous, and so this is fantastic. And then creatures have disadvantage on saving throws against your spells that deal lightning or thunder damage. Again, Tempest clerics are going to love this. Storm sorcerers, if you build the character right, can really take advantage of this. Anyone who is an evoker that uses thunder and lightning spells are going to do a lot with this. This is very nice. I could see this being really strong on the right character, and having immunity to lightning and thunder damage while bloodied is going to be massive in the right fight. Like, that is the kind of thing which could completely defang a big bad evil guy if their spell selection is the wrong list, or if they are like a storm giant or something like that. This is a really good feat. I would give this an A. And then Boon of the Soul Drinker. Ability score increase any of your choice by 1. Grave resistance. You have resistance to cold and necrotic damage. Okay, 2 resistances is nice. And then Siphon Life. When an enemy within 120 feet of you is reduced to 0 hit points, you can take a reaction to regain 50 hit points. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Okay, all right. 50 hit points is not nothing. This is better than a second wind slightly, but not by a lot. Not at 19th level, where you're adding that as to a second wind. So that is it. It is nice to get that. And it doesn't matter what kind of enemy, so you could use that pretty easily. I just think 50 is too small for this benefit. I really think if it was like 100, that would be a much more impactful thing for a character. 50 is just not going to be that much at 20th level. You're going to be losing that multiple times in a combat, just because HP spike so much, and damage spikes so much by that point. So I don't think yes, this prevents the bag of rats problem by saying you can only do this once per short rest. So if you can't just like refill your health easily. But that said, why can't you? If they could easily just set a CR rating for it and just go from there. This is an okay feat. It is useful, and it is once per short rest, which again is better than once per long rest. Looking at you, Exquisite Radiance. But when an enemy within 120 feet of you is reduced to 0, you can take reaction to regain. It's also taking a reaction. Yeah, I think this is a C. Yeah, it's certainly better than some of the ones in here, but it is not that great. And these are the epic boons here. So this is it for what I want to talk about in Forgotten Realms Heroes of Faerûn. I don't think I'm going to do a video on the spells just because there's way more math involved and way more speculation that would need to be done. I would rather see those actually tested out before I weigh in on their impact in the game. But I am excited to do more of these kinds of videos. I really appreciate the enthusiasm that I've gotten from people, especially on our Discord. Which, side note, you should check out our Discord, the Discord for Certain POV. It's a great place to talk about all things nerdy. We have great conversations about TTRPGs. We have great conversations about Superman stuff, music, video games. It's a really fun place to go. I highly recommend it. Yeah, so I would like to keep making these. There was a recent Unearthed Arcana, so I think I'm going to talk about that because I think that is actually a spot where I have a lot of thoughts about what should go into everyone's notes for the playtest feedback forms. That's just an area where I feel strongest. So I'm going to talk about that next. But until then, I really hope you enjoyed this. If you can support the show, we do have a Patreon. That is at patreon.com/certainpovmedia, where you can support us. Even if you just join at the free tier, we are doing 2 essays a week, one on TTRPG topics and one on a nerdy topic of my choice. We are doing clips and bonus content for people at the paid tiers. And then if you're joining at the executive producer level, you get shout outs in every episodes of our podcasts. So check those out. And just look around this YouTube channel. We're doing a lot of stuff, and I'm really excited for all the things that we've got going on. Check out, check out all the stuff that's here, and check out certainpov.com, where you can find links to all kinds of great podcasts that are part of our network. It's just a really good place, full of wonderful nerds, and I hope that you found this video helpful, and I hope you have a great week.